Howdy, everybody. This is Father Christopher once again. We're going to do an activity from our books. For our parents, it's on page 99, activity number 4, and it's going to be talking about Ascension and Pentecost. For the kids' books, it's on pages 88 and 89, and continuing on to the following pages. So this is an activity where they get the chance to do a little bit of coloring in their home, but also the chance to talk about what happened at the Ascension and at Pentecost. So this is especially for our parents, but for our parents, first, your goal is to kind of set the stage for them. Allow them to think a little bit about what happened at the Ascension. So when Jesus ascended into heaven, he gave the disciples a mission. He told them what they were called to do after he left. He says, "Go, baptize all nations in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, making disciples of them, and be my witnesses to the ends of the earth." The idea was that they were to go out and continue the mission that Jesus gave them. But before anything else, they were called to pray, to receive the gift of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, so that they could have the power necessary to go forth and to share this message with the world. Now, the very first page that you can do with your kids is this coloring page, and have them read together these very first phrases that says, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." So you can read those and notice that they'll get the chance to color those in. Now, the really cool part about that phrase is this is exactly what the disciples do. When they receive the Holy Spirit, they first witness to Christ in Jerusalem, and then they go out through Judea and Samaria, all of the nations in Israel, and then finally they go out to the ends of the earth sharing the good news. It's actually split, Acts of the Apostles is split into 3 parts that talk about them doing this. So you can have the children color that first and to think about what they were called to do at the very beginning. Then after that's done, then you can move on to the next part and set the scene for Pentecost. So remember, at Pentecost, the disciples were scared. They were scared. They were so worried. They were terrified. They were so scared of what was to come. Got to remember, these are the same people who ran away when Jesus was dying on the cross, when he was being crucified and put on trial. They were scared to suffer with him. So they're praying because they know they can't do this by themselves. They know they can't share the good news by themselves. So as this is taking place, they realize they need to pray. And Jesus told them, "Pray, and soon I will send you the gift of the Holy Spirit." So later on, you'll see this both in the kids' books and your books, but this passage from the Acts of the Apostles. Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 15. 1 through 4. When the time of Pentecost was fulfilled, they were all in one place together, and suddenly there came from the sky a noise like a strong driving wind, and it filled the entire house in which they were. Then there appeared to them tongues as of fire, which parted and came to rest on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in different tongues, as the Spirit enabled them to proclaim. So on this day, after they received the Holy Spirit, they opened the doors and began to share the good news of Jesus. As they did so, when people heard Peter preach, this is the same Peter who denied Jesus 3 times, when they heard Peter preach, 3,000 people on that day were baptized. 3,000 people heard Peter preach and says, "Wow, I want to be a Christian too." And they realized also their part in the death of Jesus, because they were around during the time when Jesus died, probably those 50 days before on the Feast of Passover. So they changed their lives because of all of this. So you can have your children continue on with the coloring on pages 90 and 91 of the moment of Pentecost. Now, have them take a look at who those different characters are in the picture. So you'll notice above they have the Holy Spirit in the form of a dove, and who's right in the center of the picture. Right in the center. It's Mary. Mary's right at the center of the picture of Pentecost. She's the one guiding the apostles on what they're called to do as they receive the Holy Spirit, because she received the Holy Spirit when she gave birth to Jesus, or when she conceived Jesus in her heart at the Annunciation. So this is also very, very important in the course of their preparation. Now, at the very end, it has the kids going through a question and answer, and you can help them with this, but you've already answered a lot of these questions with them. So the very first one, at the Ascension, Who does Jesus tell the apostles will come upon them? Who did he say will come upon them from that verse we read? The Holy Spirit. Okay. What mission does Jesus give the apostles? To be what? We've talked about this in the last lesson. To actually be witnesses. Testigos, witnesses to him. Now, what is a witness? So it's someone who gives testimony, who talks about what they've seen and heard, and tells others what they saw. So, as I mentioned before in the last one, the shepherds were witnesses of the birth of Jesus. They went and shared with others what they had heard. Now, on Pentecost, Mary and the apostles were all together. What did they hear? Think first, what did they hear? A driving wind. A driving wind, a strong driving wind. And then, what did they see? What did they see? What came to rest on top of each of them? Flames as of fire, tongues of fire. Okay? And then whom or what were they filled with? Think about this. Who were they filled with in that moment? The Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit. And what could they do now that they could not do before? So at that moment, they began to speak in different what? I know it says tongues, but think of it this way. They began to speak in different languages, all kinds of different languages, so that when they came out and began to speak, everyone understood them in their own language. So once again, this is just another lesson that can hopefully help you in aiding the children in preparing for their confirmation or in learning about their confirmation. God bless.